A new study has found that raccoons are showing early signs of domestication. Dogs, you may have competition. Now, the study conducted at the University of Arkansas suggests that raccoons living in urban areas in North America are physically changing in response to life around humans. Now, the researchers suggested that domestication starts when wild animals start hanging around humans and adapt on their own, rather than us domesticating them. Dogs hung around ancient garbage piles and cats showed up for the mice that followed. But in this process over hundreds of years, physical changes were also observed: shorter snouts, smaller heads, floppy ears, and white patches of fur. This pattern, which is noted all the way back in the 1800s, is called the domestication syndrome. And raccoons in the Big 25 and before GTA 6 might have that syndrome. Of the 20,000 raccoons observed across the US, researchers discovered that the ones living in the city have shorter snouts than the ones living in rural areas. Bro, what even is this year? Alright, it's official. Japan have officially declared war on bears. This week, the freaking Japanese military were deployed to help contain a worrying surge of bear attacks, which are occurring largely in residential areas, including supermarkets, schools, and bus stops. What the hell? In fact, in just the last 6 months alone, 12 people have been killed and over 100 more have been injured, which is the highest amount of attacks since records began. But before you think the army is going in there dumping rounds at these bears, soldiers are not actually allowed to kill them under Japanese law. They're only providing logistical support, like setting up traps and then launching drones that bark and then play sounds of fireworks to scare them off, and also supporting hunters who are allowed to kill them. But what makes it even crazier is why it's worse now than ever before. Reports state that this is largely down to Japan's declining population, with hunters getting old and retiring, villages and cities getting emptier, encouraging these bears to move in. But also they state that climate change is interfering with the flowers and pollination of some of their food that they usually eat. So they've been increasingly moving into suburban areas to look for something to eat. One Japanese mayor even explained how some residents have become so afraid that they're canceling events and refusing to leave their homes. Bro, are rats evolving? What you are looking at is the first footage ever captured of a rat actively hunting bats. Yet again, we are witnessing history, because according to one of the authors of the recently published study, to our knowledge, this type of rat behavior has not previously been documented scientifically. But what especially stuns scientists is how these rats in Germany are actually hunting. Not only are these rats going to where these bats are hibernating, but they're also snatching them out of the air. But as cool as this might appear, scientists believe that this is actually kind of worrying. They warned that this raises concern about potential pathogen exchange between two major wildlife reservoirs, leading to a possible spreading of disease. Don't tell me Germany finna be the new Wuhan. And not only that, but local bat population is potentially under threat, with them being slowly picked off. They documented 13 confirmed kills and 30 predation attempts over a 5-week period at just one site. The Ratatouille sequel about to be dark as hell. Okay guys, some very serious breaking news. There has been a mass stabbing on board a moving train in the UK. Here's what we know so far. So 10 people are in hospital, 9 of which have life-threatening injuries after a man indiscriminately started attacking people with a knife. Now, this happened late last night in Cambridgeshire, which is north of London. And according to witnesses who were on the train, at first they thought this was some sort of Halloween prank, because this is the Halloween weekend. But after people started running down the carriages, soaked in blood, telling everyone that someone has got a knife, they started to know that this was real. Now, witnesses who spoke with the BBC said that everyone just started huddling towards the front of the train, trying to escape. One older guy blocked a girl who was about to get attacked, which left him with gashes in his neck and on his head. People were having panic attacks, and there was just nowhere to go. Now, police have since arrested 2 men in connection with this attack, and they confirmed that counter-terrorism officers would be supporting this investigation. However, they have not released the men's identities or motives, but when they do, I'll make sure to make an update. Gen Z in Mexico have had enough. Massive protests erupted yesterday in several cities, including outside the presidential palace, where Claudia Sheinbaum works and lives. Protesters say that they are angry at the government's failure to clamp down on down violent crime in the country. And while it started out peaceful, a small group of protesters started tearing down fences and throwing objects at riot police, leading to clashes and a response of tear gas and fire extinguishers. Around 120 people were injured, with 100 of them being police officers. Now, these protests were triggered by the recent public assassination of Mayor Carlos Manzo, who was very outspoken about organized crime in the country. Demonstrators at this protest chanted, "Carlos did not die, the government killed him." And also, similar to other Gen Z organized rallies around the world, the One Piece flag was seen there too. But to give you an idea of what they are protesting, since the year 2008, American politicians have been murdered. In that same time frame for politicians in Mexico, that number stands at a staggering 1,271. Mexico's 2024 general election was one of the most violent in the country's history, and the CPJ committee recently found that Mexico has the highest number of disappeared journalists in the world. Yet, to date, not one case of a disappeared journalist in Mexico has ever led to a conviction. And also, out of Mexico's 130,000 people registered as disappeared, only 35 have led to a conviction. Now, Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, responded to these Gen Z-led protests by questioning their motivations. She said that they were inorganic, paid for, promoted from abroad, and amplified by bots on social media. Okay, everyone needs to at least know what's happening in Tanzania right now, because it is truly staggering. Hundreds of people are now feared dead. We're talking up to 700, some sources say, after major unrest broke out on Friday, protesting the country's election results. And you're wondering, why is this such a big thing? Well, listen to this. The country's president, Samia Hassan, she said that she received almost 98% of the results. Yeah, you get it. So her main opposition, one's in jail, another one was barred from running for technical reasons. Amnesty International, they're saying that there was a pattern of suspicious disappearances and deaths leading up to the election. And because of this, there's been such a large protest that's been happening over the past 3 days. It's triggered an internet shutdown. No one essentially can go on the internet at the minute. And the country's opposition party, this is where it gets really horrific. They are claiming that 700 people have been killed since Friday. That's 3 days. If true, that's staggering. Now, others cite different numbers, but still just as staggering. A diplomatic source in Tanzania told the BBC that there was credible evidence that at least 500 people have been killed. Amnesty International, they say it's around 100. Reports also say that hospitals in the country are refusing to give out information when asked about casualties. And also, because of the internet blackout, information from local journalists is also limited. So, truly staggering stuff, but I'll try and keep you guys updated as we find out more. Bill Gates just shocked everyone after making a claim about climate change that no one expected. You see, yesterday he published a long essay titled 3 Tough Truths About Climate, in which he stated, as truth 1, that climate change will not lead to humanity's demise, and that people will be able to live and thrive in most places on Earth for the foreseeable future. In truth 2, he said that sometimes human welfare takes a backseat to lowering emissions with bad consequences, and that because of this, resources need to be shifted away from the battle against climate change and focused towards preventing disease and hunger because, quote, climate change is not the biggest threat to the lives and livelihoods of people in poor countries, and it won't be in the future. And as part of his third and final truth, he said that he wished that there was enough money to fund every climate change idea, but there isn't. And that up until this point, too much good money has been put into expensive and questionable efforts, ultimately claiming that money spent on health and prosperity is our best defense against climate change. But the reason this is so significant is because of the influence Bill Gates has in the climate sector. So when he makes recommendations like this, people in positions of power and the ability to do things tend to listen to him. So will this trigger a shift away from climate funding? Will this have an impact on how activists speak about climate change? Or will this ultimately just get brushed off and debunked? Okay guys, pretty major breaking news. For the first time in over 30 years, the United States, the only country in history to have ever used a nuclear weapon at war, will begin testing those weapons once again. Now, America stopped testing in 1992, but Trump, actually on his way to go meet President Xi of China, this 34-year-old guy is now in charge of the wealthiest city on earth. Zohran Mamdani is not only the youngest mayor in 133 years, but also America's first ever that's Muslim. And now he's won the election in the city with the highest concentration of Jews outside of Israel. He even pledged to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu as a war criminal if he stepped foot in New York City, which he did less than a month ago before Mamdani became mayor. He says he's a democratic socialist, think Bernie Sanders and AOC. He essentially didn't exist politically only 12 months ago. He's a former rapper, was born in Uganda, and is almost the exact opposite to Donald Trump in terms of his policies. He wants to raise the minimum wage to $30. He wants to freeze rent prices. He wants to make buses in NYC NY-free. He wants to initiate universal childcare. But when asked how is he gonna pay for all of that, he often refers to raising taxes on the richest people of New York by about 2% and also passing similar tax hikes for large corporations. Now, his critics say that this